Lo-fi is short for low fidelity, and it's the idea of trying to get back to the days of analog recording and music listening, when you would actually record music to a physical medium like tape, whether that be a reel-to-reel or cassette, and then listening back on things like vinyl records. And I think you can distill the lo-fi sound into 3 categories: EQ, modulation, and saturation. By combining and understanding and using those 3 things in different ways, you can get a myriad of different analog, saturated, character-filled guitar sounds. Real quick before we move on, a quick plug for my video course, Fretboard Fundamentals, Chords, and Rhythm. You can get 50% off of that course in the description box down below. From understanding complex chords to being able to build your own chord voicings from scratch, everything you need to know is in that course. And for more information about what's in the course, check out the link in the description box down below. The first thing we need to understand is when it comes to these old analog recording mediums like tape or vinyl, a lot of times they weren't great at reproducing the lowest frequencies and the highest frequencies like you can hear right now on my vocal. Let's say, for example, I wanted to make my voice sound like I was recording and playing back on an old worn out cassette deck. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is shave high end and shave low end. Now to do this, we're going to use an EQ and the high pass and low pass filter. Now, if you're not familiar, basically high pass is another way of saying low cut. You're cutting low frequencies and letting high frequencies pass through. Low pass is the opposite. You're cutting high frequencies and letting lows pass through. And the more extreme you go with this effect, you can start to emulate other things like an old dictaphone cassette recorder, for example. Now, obviously, you can do the same thing on guitar. Right now, I'm plugged straight into my Axe effects, and I've got a really hi-fi polished guitar sound pulled up. It's really pretty. A lot of air, you can hear the pick attack. But again, let's say I wanted to sound like I'm recording to that old worn out cassette deck. The first thing I'm going to cut is all of that articulate, airy top end. Then you can do the same thing with the low end. Cut off a lot of that low frequency that this Axe Effects is reproducing. And right there, I've taken my super digital sounding hi-fi polished guitar and made it more analog. Modulation is a key part of the lo-fi sound. And again, this goes back to the idea that we're trying to emulate the old analog mediums of recording and playback. Now, pitch modulation is a really cool approach to lo-fi because it sort of emulates the warped vinyl sound. Those of you that have LP record collections, you've probably run into this at some point. And if it's heavily warped, where as it's spinning on the platter, you can literally see it moving up and down, you can hear the pitch of the song changing. Now, while that's not a very desirable effect in the vinyl world, in the lo-fi guitar world, it's actually pretty cool. And there's a lot of pedals out there now that are sort of all-in-one lo-fi boxes. This is one of my favorite ones here. This is the JHS Artificial Blonde. It's the Madison Cunningham signature pedal, and it does this pitch modulation thing really, really well. Now, Now, when we combine that pitch modulation with that EQ approach that we talked about a second ago, we can start to get into some really interesting guitar sounds. Very, very lo-fi. So roll the EQ off on the pedal, play some nice lush chords, and you've got instant lo-fi vibes to study to. I think that sounds really, really nice. Saturation is another key component of the lo-fi sound, and it comes from the world of tape recording. When you're working on a tape machine like my Tascam 388 here, you have to be careful with your signals, with your levels going to tape. If you're not careful, you can actually hit the tape too hard and introduce a lot of compression and distortion, what we call saturation, into the sound. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the way tape distorts or breaks up is actually really nice. It's really pleasing because it's adding some compression and it's adding some harmonic richness to your sound. You can take an EQ pedal and a chorus for your pitch modulation and EQ, and then you can put a really subtle, soft overdrive after that and get a cool sort of lo-fi sound that way. Or you can use like an all-in-one pedal. This is my Generation Loss Mark II from Chase Bliss. I bought this a few weeks ago. This has become one of my favorite pedals, and it's basically a lo-fi system in a box. It's designed to emulate lots of different types of tape machines and all of the artifacts and sort of imperfections that happen when you're using tape. Now, what's cool about this pedal is they've got an actual control for saturation, and I think it's a pretty good example of what tape saturation sounds like. So here it is with saturation all the way down. Now you can hear that's pretty distorted. And in the real world, like on the 388 here, I would absolutely be slamming the tape to get that much distortion and saturation out of it. But you can hear it's compressing and it's overdriving the sound, kind of like an overdrive pedal or an amp would. And so taking the three elements that we've talked about so far, some EQ, some modulation, and now saturation, and combining those three things together, we're gonna get a really interesting lo-fi sound. So right now, the Gen Loss is basically doing my EQ for me. You can hear it's rolling off a lot of top end and low end. And then I'm gonna use wow and flutter to bring in some of that pitch modulation that I'm looking for. And then just add a touch of saturation, and we've got ourselves a lo-fi guitar sound. So that's how you get the lo-fi guitar sound: EQ, modulation, and saturation. There's plenty of different ways to go about getting the sound, whether it's a standalone pedal or a plugin or a combination of stuff that you already have. The important thing is to experiment and lean into the sound. To me, I use this as a tool for inspiration, to kind of spice up and add some color and some complexity to a part or chord progression that might need it. If you want more information about the pedals that I use today, as well as some of my other favorite sort of lo-fi pedals, there will be links in the description. Some of those will be affiliate links, others won't. And I should point out this video is not sponsored by anyone, but if you use any of those affiliate links, I will earn a small commission, which helps me out in running the channel, and thank you. Also, don't forget, you can get 50% off the Fretboard Fundamentals Chords and Rhythm course via the link in the description. My name is Rhett Shull. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.